This is for you, this is for him. This one goes to Stasio. You can't see the ones they put down. This one. Yeah. So starting? Whenever? Okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah. We start by praising and thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We seek refuge in him from our bad deeds and from the evil of our own souls. Whomsoever Allah guides, none can lead astray, and whoever Allah leads astray, none can guide. I bear witness there's nothing worthy of worship except Allah without partner, and I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his final slave and final messenger. Jazakallah khair for having me, brothers. Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum salam. It's nice to see you all, those who I know and those who I'm just getting to know, inshallah. My name's Robbie, my Muslim name's Hamza, and I converted to Islam 8.5 years ago. It was May 30th, May 31st, 2012. So yeah, 8.5 years, alhamdulillah. I suppose I should start by introducing myself and I guess my start to life and where things sort of began to turn. I was born in Brisbane. My mother's Australian and my father was from New Caledonia, a Frenchman. When I was born, we moved more or less straight away to New Caledonia in the South Pacific. At the time, there was civil war between the natives and the French, and Dad was running hotels there for the Japanese, and the people that he was working for, he wasn't really in a position to be able to walk away, but it became unsafe there, so he sent me and Mum back to Australia. Unfortunately, their marriage didn't withstand the long distance, and when I was about 3 years old, they got divorced. And this is probably one of the more significant events that helped shape my life, or that did shape my life in looking back over things. My father was a loving man and a good man, but I just didn't get to see enough of him. I didn't get to follow his example or really see what that was because of the distance there. He'd come and see me as often as he could when I was little. Sometimes that was twice a year until I was maybe 5 or 6. And then Mum decided to move me and her over to America. And we went to California when I was about 8. And we only went there for a vacation. But Mum decided that there might be a future there for us, and she decided that we would stay. And so we did, and which was much to my father's disliking because it put a massive distance between us, and I didn't get to see him for the next 5 years. And as a little fella, I very much felt every moment of that. I missed him a lot, and it leaves a little guy. It leaves a man a bit lost without a dad in the house, and it is significant, and it's significant to my story. Anyway, eventually, Mum and I, we ended up moving to the other side of the US. We're in New York, New Jersey. She remarried this Italian dude who I didn't think much of then, I don't think much of now. He wasn't abusive, but he just wasn't a good guy either. And I was just an accessory that came with my mum. He made it pretty clear he didn't like me. I felt I was of no value to him, and I didn't like him either, so that was okay. But again, there was no example for me to follow who wasn't a person I looked up to. So when we moved to New Jersey, in New York and New Jersey, we sort of lived in lower middle class America, more towards lower class. So there's a lot of poverty around us. Mum was a single mum before she married this dude, and so we'd live in like housing complexes and stuff in New York, and the kids were a bit rough around those areas. But I was still pretty little, so I wasn't influenced too much by it. But then when she remarried and we moved to New Jersey, I was at that age, 13, and the kids in the neighborhood were just, man, they were pretty ruthless, like with each other and with people they didn't know, So I was like the new kid again, moved house again, moved schools again, And like, yeah, I had a real tough time in the neighborhood because, like, I don't know, over there, it's sort of like you see on TV, you know, it's like who you know. And if you got a big circle of friends, kind of you're all right. Or if you got a big brother who's tough, like you're all right. But I didn't have any of those things, and I didn't have anyone to run home to and ask for help. And you don't go home and tell your mum that you just got punched in the face or something, you know, you just bury that stuff. And so I got bullied a lot when I was first in the area. And it took me a while to get to know people and that. And I was a little kid too. Like I was always the smallest kid in my class. Like by a country mile, I was tiny. Like I looked like I was 8 years old when I was 13. And yeah, well, that didn't make things easier either. But eventually it's like, you know, if you can't beat them, join them, right? And these kids that were like picking on me, the kids that everyone wanted to be around, they were doing a bunch of drugs and you know, they were little criminals and selling drugs and beating people up and doing all sorts of stuff. And man, I just wanted to fit in, you know? Like my mum always raised me good. She was a very straight lady. She still is, mashallah. And she used to tell me when I was a kid, I remember her saying that she'd rather see me dead than ever use drugs. So I had a big thing in my head that like drugs are bad, yeah? And but that didn't stop me from doing it. These kids, these young brothers that I used to hang out with, they'd stolen some weed off their mum, and yeah, they just pulled it out one day, and there was nowhere for me to go. I couldn't back out, you know. So I didn't want to be like I didn't want to look weak, so I did what they did, you know. And I hated it. I felt terrible and so guilty. Wallah, I felt so guilty, and but then it just, I don't know, it just happened again and again and again. And I mean, by the time before I'd even hit 14, now I'm using LSD, I'm smoking weed, using coke. We were cooking up ketamine and using that and selling it. And like we were doing anything we could get our hands on. And at the time it was normal, but like I look at 13-year-olds now and I think, man, like that's bad. But you know, in the area I was in, like, because there was a lot of single mums too, like there was just no control over the households, you know? And so the little brothers did what the older brothers did, and the older brothers did what their older brothers did. And a lot of like the best known names in our area and that were people who'd been done for drug trafficking and stuff. So these people were like pretty dangerous too, and we looked up to them. And so there was like this fantasy world that, you know, that life was something for us to look up to, you know. But yeah, like my friend's little brother, like one of my best friends, his little brother was smoking weed and doing LSD with us when he was 9 years old. That's when I was 13. At 9 years old, he was smoking cigarettes when he was 8, and then he started everything else when he was 9. And, you know, you look at it now, it's disgusting. But when you're a kid, when you're 10, 11, 12, 13, you all look the same, you know? But, so that's where things changed for me. Like everything changed when I started using drugs and becoming okay with that. I was still despite like having heaps of friends now, and I was, like I said, I was always the smallest kid, so that fear of other people didn't leave me. I just had people to fight my battles for me, you know, and so I was still very insecure, and I carried a lot of those insecurities into manhood or young manhood or whatever you call it, like into my 18s, 19s, 20s, and being an insecure dude. The pursuit of manhood and whatever, like, man, made me make a lot of mistakes, you know, like a lot of bad choices. And I'll go into that a bit. So anyway, in America, right, mum sees me doing real bad stuff with the kids in the neighborhood, especially like violent sort of stuff. And she was on bad terms with my stepdad. They'd separated, but what she didn't tell me then was that he was making threats and stuff towards her, and she was scared that I was going to find out, and that us kids in the neighborhood would do something terrible to him, you know, and we probably would have. Like I said, I was tiny, but there was a lot of us, you know what I mean? Like, and we stuck staunch when it comes to that type of thing, you know, and so only God knows what would have happened to that dude if we'd found that out. And so she decided to move me to Australia and get me away from there, and the only way she could do that was to say that we were coming on a vacation to see our family and that. And then when we got here, I found out there was no return ticket. And I was angry about that for like 4 years. I was filthy. I just spent all this time like building up my friends in an area where your friends are like who you know is who you are, and you know, like my self-worth was all dependent on the people that I could call on to come back me up. Now all of a sudden I'm in Brisbane, Australia, I don't know a single person. I was filthy. I was very angry. Now, eventually, you know, I met some people. I had some good friends. They were pretty straight, you know. Like I got to know what South Pacific Islanders were. I'd never met a Samoan person in my life. Like over in America, they just weren't there in Northeast America. But I got to meet these Polynesians, and they were beautiful people, and I had some good friends. But because I'd had a foundation and they weren't using drugs and stuff either. So there was a break here. When I came here, there was a break of me not using but because I had that foundation of getting off my head from when I was younger, like I was okay with it, with the concept. And so when it presented itself to me again, I was just like, yeah, sweet, let's do it, you know? But this time it came like in different forms. Like it wasn't LSD and stuff. Now everyone was popping pills and ecstasy, and then I was with like a treacherous girl, and like this is a true story, man. This is how I started taking amphetamines. I was dating this girl for a while, and I woke up one morning. She slept over my house, and she literally had her finger in my mouth. She fed me speed while I was lying there asleep, and I woke up and I was like, you know, what's that taste? That's disgusting. I realized what she'd done, and I was so angry. And then like half an hour later, it started kicking in, and I loved it. You know, astaghfirullah, I loved it. And then, you know, from that day, I was a methamphetamine addict more or less for the next 14 years. When I was 18 years old, 19 years old, I began injecting amphetamines, and not a soul knew. No one knew that I was injecting, you know, because like I knew how bad it was that I was doing that to myself, and I didn't want anyone else to know. Like I was so ashamed of myself, but I was doing it anyway, you know. So we party, people smoke the pipe and do everything else they do, but I was doing that in the background, yeah. And I was trying to live a normal life, you know. I had relationships, I worked normal jobs, but I was always partying on the weekend, you know. And it didn't seem like there was anything wrong with it. Like, I mean, I wasn't shooting up every day or anything. But it was, when I did use, it had come in like flurries, you know. But I was always partying on the weekends, and everyone around me did. Like, that's the culture here, you know. Like, there was nothing that seemed in any way, shape or form wrong or bad about going out and dropping a couple of eckies and going out clubbing for the weekend. And then you meet all these interesting people, you're really friendly, you're talking to everyone, you're having the time of your life, you know, and it opens up your social circles. And I used to think, you know, this is so much better than drinking because it costs less, I don't get violent, you know, I'm not trying to do stupid things. And so it seemed to me like a really good idea, like this is a good way to live your life. And but it was what comes with it, you know. The ice and stuff is, you'd go out, you pop pills on the weekend, and you go back to recovery, someone's house for recovery, and then the ice comes out, and then the Fanta comes out, and everything else, and one thing leads to another, you know. And long story short, you know, my weekend warrior stints started to drag into the week, you know. Destroyed my first like serious relationship, my first marriage. It destroyed relationships, everything, you know. I like the tattoos and everything. Like I started getting tattooed when I was about 18, and like I'm pretty sure nearly every tattoo I got was when I was high, you know. And you can see I wear a lot of tattoos, right? Which is scary, but everything, it just all goes hand in hand, you know. Getting chopped and doing stupid stuff. The decisions you make when you're on that path, like, are so short-sighted. It's just all about like today, like how I feel today and tonight. You know, you don't really care if you drive your car and license and get caught, because it's like, it's all right, like for today. But then the next 2 years of your life not having a car and being able to go to work, like you're not thinking about that stuff at the time, which is something that, you know, hopefully we can draw something from that. When my first marriage collapsed, I mean, I don't think it was a tangible thought, like an actual thought that I realized at the time, but when I look back, I failed that life as far as I was concerned. I hadn't finished school, my relationships, everything had fallen apart. I was using all these drugs. Like I was a failure in every way that you could fail. And so instead of deciding to sort of try and do something about that, I decided to throw myself into it deeper. And I made a very conscious decision at about 25 years old that I was going to be a full-time crim. I was going to sell drugs, I was going to collect money, I was going to try and make a name for myself and just be some hard dude, you know. And again, I didn't have a dad. I had no image of what a man was supposed to be like to pull me back, to give me a true north, you know, a direction to go back towards. So it was just anything goes. So the biggest, toughest dudes around me that I saw, I was like, yeah, that's what I want to be. But the problem was I was still that insecure kid. Like, you know, insecurities don't go away by doing stupid, bad stuff and pretending to be something you're not. They go away by doing good things and getting to know yourself and actually accomplishing things that that you can be proud of and that earn your own self-respect. You know, and it is hard. I mean, we look at the TV, or we look at, you know, social media, and we look at these photos of these dudes that we think we want to look like, you know, these bikey looking people with whatever gold hanging off of money, and then we look in the mirror, and then we look back at the thing, and I look back in the mirror, and it's like, man, this ain't matching up. You know, and that's hard, because this is everything that tells us what we're supposed to be like is just a lie, you know. And I was very, like, at heart, always, like, but just by nature, my natural, I guess the way God sort of programmed me, was I had a soft sort of heart. I didn't like violence as such, yeah, that's who I was. That's who I was. But hanging around the people that I thought I was supposed to be like they seemed ruthless. They didn't. So I thought there was something wrong with me, because I had that heart, you know, that wanted to help someone instead of screwing them over. You know, I was always the one. Like, I used to go out with the boys and stuff when I was young, and they'd be doing breaks and whatever and sneaks, and I'd never go in. Like, I'd never go into the houses and do someone's house, because I always felt guilty that person in there's, like, worked hard for those things. So I always had that feeling. But again, because I was the only one, and sometimes people think, like, you're a pussy for staying out, you know, and that was hard, because it made me feel like that too. Like, I thought there was something wrong with me, but I refused. I'd always be the one that stayed in the car. I'd always be the one that stayed outside. And I thank God for that now, that I was that one. But, you know, it took me to get to 31 years old and actually to realize that, and go on this big journey of self-discovery to realize that I didn't have to pretend to be anything to earn my self-respect. I just needed to be the dude, just to be true to the heart that God gave me, and just be a nice person and excel at that, and try to excel at that and build on that, rather than try to stifle it and pretend to be some ruthless idiot, which I wasn't. And, you know, there's so many wasted years, so many people hurt in that process. I hurt myself, I hurt my mum, I hurt, you know, anyone that loved or cared for me, they suffered for having me in their life in one way, shape or form. Now, so all this stuff I'm talking about, you know, I'm dealing with addiction the whole time, but I didn't realize I was an addict as such. I never thought of myself as a junkie. I mean, and that's a scary thing. Like, we might be going out and having fun and getting high, yeah. Like, you smoke some yandi or whatever, you have a pinger, you take some Xannies, whatever you do. Like, you drive past some junkie in the street who's, like, sleeping in the street, scratching themselves all sawed up. If someone told you that you're, like, on that path that leads to where he's at, no one will believe it. We do not believe in any way, shape or form that that's, like, has anything to do with what I'm doing. Like, nah, that dude just out of control. Like, I'm having fun, you know, and these people don't understand how good I feel, because, right, like, you go out and you take pingers, you feel amazing. There's a reason drugs are addictive. It's because you feel fantastic. And, but there's a downside to that. And, you know, and I now realize, in looking back over my life and at the lives of other people, that dude in the street, where did he start out? Man, he started out with smoking cigarettes when he was a kid. That's always the first thing. Then he started smoking weed. Then it was something else, and something else, and pills. Then he tried amphetamines, or he tried slow. He was smoking the pipe. Now he's sticking it in his arm. Now 15 years later, he can't even recognize himself in the mirror. He started out somewhere, and that's, I guess, the essence of the message that dudes like me are trying to get through to young fellas like you, is that never underestimate how far down you can find yourself, how far you can go. Because it happens one step at a time, 1 inch at a time. And your morals and values and the things that you think you hold dear and the lines that you would never cross, you'll cross every single one of them and go much, much further than that if you choose that path for yourself. You know, I've seen pregnant chicks smoking meth and little kids in the room while everyone's doing the most awful things and situations that you just be like, man, that's disgusting. Who could ever be around that? Like, no one would do that. That's putrid. Yeah, it's putrid, but you know what, man? No one started out that way. They end up that way, believe me. Believe me, I've seen the worst of things in people. But like I'm saying, what we're trying to convince you all youth of is that it's a road. You know, if there's a road that leads, at the end of that road is a drop off. It's a cliff, and you can't see it from where you're standing right now because youth and just lack of life experience. You can only see the road that's in front of you as far as you can see in front of you, and we can see much further because we've traveled all the way down that road and we've fallen right off the edge of that cliff. And by the grace of God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed us to survive that and come back and meet you all in the middle of the road on the journey back and tell you that, man, you got to turn around, because that's where it goes. And you know what? Maybe, you know, you might be 1,000 steps away from it, but every step you take is one step closer. And there's no good down that road. You know, I'm still, you know, I'm talking more about drugs than anything, you know, but there's only so many places you end up. One, you'll end up in jail over and over again. Okay, I did. Two, you end up with mental health issues. I did. Drug-induced psychosis, which, thank God, thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he took from me. You know, when I stopped the drugs, he allowed my mind to heal. But you know, there was a stage there, like one day, I was out my backyard, and you know, I'd been up for 3 or 4 days on the meth, and I could hear my next door neighbours over the fence, like sort of rustling around, doing something in the backyard, and the wife talking to the husband. And she said something about something or other called this junkie next door. And I yelled out, I said, who you call a junkie? Your dog, 1, 2, 3. And then the husband starts arcing up, and I'm saying, come out the front then, let's have a crack, you know? I go inside my house, I grab a weapon, I had a pit bull, I put him on a short chain, I went out the front of the house, and I'm G'd up, I'm waiting for this guy to come out. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I'm starting to sweat, what's going on here? I'm looking at the house, and I can hear him in there yelling, I'm gonna go out and thrash this bloke, 1, 2, 3. And his kids screaming, Dad, don't go out there, blah, blah. And I'm G'd up for the fight of my life. I don't know how long went by, 45 minutes, an hour and a half. I'm starting to question myself, is this even happening? And I don't think there was anyone home. Like when I look back on it, you know, like I'm damn sure I didn't hear any of the things I thought I did, but it was as clear as daylight. I heard those things being said and I was having those conversations. That's what insanity looks like. You know, that's crazy. And imagine if someone had walked out of that house just for the sake of going to the shops, if the husband had walked out and I attacked him and did something horrible to him. For what? For what? What did he do? Nothing. You know, I've got mates who all night long they think they're at the blinds like this, looking at blinds. Their necks are stiff because every sound they hear, they think someone's coming for them. They're setting traps around their houses, and this isn't like I'm not talking about like 1 in 20. I'm talking about probably 12 in 20 of long-term serious chemical users and people with paranoid thoughts. One of my best friends in the world, who I love, and he loves me, and we've been friends for 20 years, and sometimes he still thinks that I'm plotting and planning, like he thought I was going to kidnap him and zip tie and put him in the boot for nothing, for nothing. Nothing happened, there was no argument. But that's his reality. And it's so hard for him, and people get angry at him, just snap out of it. What's wrong with you, you idiot? You know, he goes to work and thinks people are plotting and planning, and he doesn't want to feel like that. Man, if he doesn't want to go through these thoughts, but that's what happens. So I said, there's jail, we got mental health. You know, other than that, what? You keep using until it kills you? You OD? You know, I mean, there's no successful outcome from that life. Or you long term, you use long term and trying to sort of kind of make it fit in with your life, kind of not, and then your kids watch you and they grow up and they start doing it, but then they don't have the control that you did, and so one of them dies. Man, it's just all evil. And I'll tell you something about drugs, man. From practicing this religion for the last 8 years and observing, I'm a prison chaplain now, by the way, for our community. I lead prayers in the different hubbas, in the different jails. So I get to see a lot of men struggling with a lot of different situations, all right? And it's given me so much perspective on our religion, and it's allowed me to observe the different effects that all the drugs and stuff have had on different people. I'm really gonna shit on the gym. Yeah, but look, sorry, it's just hard to think about all this stuff, you know. There's so much suffering, man. These guys all started out, you know, we all started out someone's kids, little kids, you know, just and the places where people end up from this stuff. You know, it's just it's very difficult. SubhanAllah. But yeah, so look, anyway, like I said, we got mental health issues. We've got where there ain't no path to success through doing these things, man. There ain't no path to success. But I want to touch on something that comes from all this and that leads to all this too, is doing bizzo. Because I think like a massive risk to your people, this generation, is if you start getting involved trying to make money out of this stuff. Because you got to understand, like, we're going to be accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, yeah, for everything and every person we've hurt. And the easiest thing in the world to do is get caught up in this game of making easy money. And it doesn't look like you're doing that much. You know, you start selling a little bit of weed and that covers what you're smoking. Then you realize you can make a little bit extra, and so you do that. Or, you know, I'll buy, you know, 5 pills and then I can make it a little bit thing, and then you meet someone's older brother and he's getting them for $16 or he's getting them for $8. You know, you can sell them for 20. And man, it keeps going down and down and down. But like, from the experience I've had, like I get mothers in the community and imams and people calling me saying, listen, please come help this brother, he's using drugs. I got a call today from someone whose cousin is 29 years old and just using like ruthless and just tearing the whole family upside down. And these mothers, you know what, man, like they cry, they suffer so much. My own mum, like, she said it was like I died when she knew that I was using, and she used to stay up all night long. And you know what, even at one stage, she even thought that, kind of hoped that I would overdose, because she'd just rather see me die than shame myself and live like that, right? And her suffering, like, someone's got to be accountable for that, you know? And I'm accountable for as much as I did, but for every kilo of gear that you sell, there could be, like, that kilo could be making 100 mothers cry themselves to sleep over watching their sons junkie on. And as people who believe in God and the afterlife and understand that we're being watched and judged and everything else, how can we possibly think that we're going to make money out of that sort of suffering without having to answer for it? It doesn't make sense. And some people think they're smart, you know, because I'll just sell this stuff, I don't use it though, you know what I mean, it's for junkies. You think Allah's gonna let you go with that? You know, and as a community, we've got a big responsibility. Like, unfortunately, our community gets involved, does a lot of nonsense, you know, when you know that. Like, we're on the streets and stuff, a lot of Muslim people have big names and are respected for some reason in relation to all this. And as a community, we don't really do all that much to speak up against it. So what do we think, that we're going to like breed poisonous snakes and let them out into the world and our own kids aren't going to get bit? And then we're so surprised when someone in our family or in our community, the kid comes home 17 years old and he's smoking the meth, but you know, I'm high-fiving everyone down at the masjid who's selling kilos of it. You know, just, man, if there's one thing I could just really, really, really push you guys, just don't get involved in that stuff. Yeah? Don't, you know, it's going to come back and it'll affect you, eh? Like, it'll affect your kids, it'll affect the people you love. Like, there's no shortcuts when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all right, and his treasures. We know, right? We agree that all things good and bad come from Allah. Agreed? So whatever I want in life, whether it's money, whether it's love, whether it's friendship, whether it's whatever, it all comes from Allah. Yeah? So when he set down a criteria and a constitution for us to follow and said, do this and I'll give you good, or do this and I'll give you bad, but we try and take shortcuts. You know what I mean? I think that somehow I've got this slick way of getting that 100 grand off Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way that displeases him, and then once I get that, then everything will be sweet and I'll make tawbah, but I'll have 100 grand in my pocket, you know? And I see a lot of people do this, and that's kind of scary because, well, it's very scary, it should be scary, because who are we negotiating with? We're trying to negotiate with Allah, who created the heavens and the earth, put the stars in their places, make the sun and the moon orbit, allow my eyes to blink and my lungs to breathe and our hearts to beat. Allahu Akbar. The creator of the seven heavens, and one is like the size of the ring in the desert compared to the Sahara, and the next is the ring in the desert. I mean, the size of God's creation we can't even fathom. And then high above the seven heavens and the Arsh and Kursi of Allah is the Lord of everything himself. And we as a little human being want to stand there and negotiate with Allah and say, I want 100 grand first before I start obeying you, you know? And that's what it is. It's sometimes I don't think we realize what our actions are actually saying. And Bismillah. And believe me, that's what they're saying. I know so many dudes, young fellas especially, they're like, I'm going to make and I'll use the 100,000 figure just for argument's sake, but they say, I want to make 100,000 and I'm out. I'm going to get into the business. I'm going to set myself up, get myself some trucks, do whatever. And then it's all good. And then I'm going to do my thing and it's all sweet and I'll be religious and it'll be all good. Man, but that is directly saying to Allah, your actions are directly saying to Allah, you give me more first before I'm going to bow my head to you and then I'll listen to you. Man, that's scary, because think about the prophets, think about the stories from the Quran, think about the Sahaba, how they used to, even the ones who were promised Jannah, they used to weep in fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they beg him for what they wanted, they begged him for forgiveness. Why? Because they knew who is Allah. They understood very clearly through spending time with the Prophet, the earlier prophets, earlier messengers. These people knew very clearly who was God. It's not to be messed around with. They begged and cried, but us, who pray 3 times a day, whatever, we want to negotiate with God. And we're going to stand there and dig our heels in. We've got to be very, very careful. Wallah. We've got to be very, very careful. You know, at the end of the day, subhanAllah, we have this deen. It took me, you know, I'm 40 years old now. It took me being a very broken human being to come crawling to God's feet and open my eyes and understand that this is all we have. You know, it wasn't until I found deen that I was able to get off the drugs completely. I walked into the masjid, the Gold Coast here, and I gave shahada, and I went home. I threw the pipe out, I threw the gear out. I don't know why, I don't know how. It was just a miracle that God gave me. He healed me and gave me a chance to redeem myself. Alhamdulillah. And, I just say to you is be true to your hearts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inclines our hearts towards good things. And we all have purpose, and we all have a meaning. We all can do something that's meaningful. Don't get caught up in this rubbish of dunya and image and what you think you're supposed to be like, or what other people think of us, or anything. I want to be scary, or I want to have this image. You can waste an entire life on that. Man, there's people starving all over the world to death, and the world needs champions of all good things. Aspire to be someone that makes life. Be a man who makes a positive impact on the world. Kids starving to death. Kids starving to death in Africa, and there's people dying every day over here of obesity. The world's upside down, yeah? And it really needs, it really needs good people. It really needs good men. I was talking to an imam the other day, and he was talking about like a syllabus for a course they're doing. And the essence of it was basically not just reading Quran and understanding, like reading it and reciting it and listening to it, but actually using it to change your character. And he said something that I find really profound. Is that the first step in all of that is to learn to see things as they really are. And there's a lot of meaning in that if you think about it, because it's very easy to lie to ourselves about who and what we are. Excuse me. Screenshotting. I don't want to screenshot the thing, I just want to shut it up. That's the guy I was talking about too. His ears must have been burning. There we go. Yeah, learn to see things as they really are. Assess yourself. What sort of man am I? You know what I mean? Where am I at in life? What am I doing? And don't be afraid to face the things about yourself that you don't like, Like I said, I was very insecure, but I was insecure because I hadn't challenged myself in the right ways. Be honest with yourself. Be really honest with yourselves, and understand the things in the world around you. And that's what I said when he says, learn to see things as they really are. That's when I talk about like drug dealing and doing bizzo. Like, don't see it like I'm just giving it. Some people say, and there's like, I'm ashamed to say this, but there's people giving fatwas apparently in other states in this country, and possibly elsewhere in the world, who knows, to say that it's halal to sell gear to people who are non-Muslim as long as you give a third of your profit to charity. I mean, I know you laugh because it's stupid, right? I mean, how could any person with a thinking brain or a heart that beats possibly accept that to be true? But I guess when you're looking for an excuse to do the wrong thing, any old excuse will do, right? But that's what's being said. And the truth of it, in seeing things as they really are, you can think like that and go, okay, cool, I got the fatwa, and stop thinking. Or you can look beyond it and go, man, that's garbage. I come from a religion where the Prophet ﷺ came as a mercy to mankind. He didn't come to poison the children of people of a different faith. How can you... Is anyone going to take a message about us, about our religion, if we're poisoning them half to death and selling drugs to their kids? I mean, it's ridiculous. So, and then you think about it. So I get this dollar and I'm going to give it to this guy, and then who's he give it to? And I think, I'm not selling drugs to kids, but the guy you sells to 25-year-olds, and he's got a 22-year-old brother who takes off him, and he knows someone who's 18, and so 22 to 18 is not a big deal, right? And the 18-year-olds hanging out with 15-year-olds, and so we go down the line, and then you end up with 9-year-olds walking around Woodridge, smoking meth and weed. And you are responsible. We are responsible, and this religion, this life, we're accountable, and real men, are accountable, and we understand, and we stand up for and recognise what we're doing, what the wrongs that we do, and we try to correct that, and not just cover it up with garbage. Look, I think I've taken enough of your time. Jazakallah khair. I know I go back and forth and ramble a lot. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to use this, my story, to be of some benefit to someone. Yous are all on the doorstep of paradise. You have the answers that I didn't have when I was your age. I don't know if I would have had the courage to follow the straight path if someone had showed it to me when I was your age. I don't know. I'd like to think that I would have, you know. Okay. Well, you know, what made me become Muslim, I was ready to kill myself, literally. Tried to string myself up a couple of times, but I was just too scared to go through with it. You know, and that was the reality of it. And I'd had a day, like, I mean, there was just days when I had a weapon loaded, pointed at my head, and I was just too scared to follow through. But you know, when you're in that moment, man, your soul is screaming, you know, I'm sure everyone's cried about something, but it's like 100 times worse than that. Like your soul is just emptying itself out, and you've got nothing, no direction, and no self-respect, nothing. And I can remember a day when I believe I screamed out to God, Allah, whatever it is that was there, show me, help me, you know, like, you know, and it was a while later. It wasn't till a while later when I remember the exact moment that I absolutely positively knew that God was real. And I was living down the Gold Coast, and I was walking my dog, and it was like one of those, it was like a stormy day. It wasn't raining though, but like the clouds were black. There was thunder and lightning, and I thought, man, I'm gonna get drenched, because these clouds came in pretty quick. And I was a long way from home with the dog, and I looked at him like, man, we're stuffed, you know. And but anyway, we turned around, and it was the heaviest, most water I'd ever seen in this world. I'm telling you, this day was black. It was crazy. And I made it all the way home. I walked up the stairs, and there was like a deck, and I took one step under the deck, and the heavens just opened up, and the rain poured down. Not one drop got me, eh? And I looked up at the sky, and subhanAllah, and I just knew that moment I saw God, so to speak. You know, like I knew that realised all of a sudden there was this something up there protecting me and watching me, and that moment was designed for me to recognise that. And so I really believed from that day, but I had no direction, and I didn't want religion, because I thought religion was all just man-made ways of controlling people. I thought that. It's funny, I had a lot of opinions about things I had no knowledge of, and that's part of youth too. We got a lot of opinions about things, but we don't know much. And it's still true at 40, by the way. We don't get too much smarter. But yeah, I'd met Muslims in Brisbane sometime before that, and I was attracted to the brothers because of how staunch they were. They were very staunch, but not in an arrogant way, and they were clean. Everyone I knew who I'd looked up to before were junkies or selling drugs. There was always something attached to that image. But these boys who I'd met, they were like soldiers type people, but very humble, and just their demeanour appealed to me. So there was an interest there automatically through them. From a young age, and I don't know why, I didn't know what the Quran was, but I'd always said to my mum I'd like to read the Quran one day. She says that when I was young I used to talk about exploring different religions. I don't remember that, but you know, I must have had something in me. So anyway, I had like I said, I was like kill myself, that's where I was at, and I was just having one of those days, and I felt like I had no one to talk to, and I was going through my phone, and I had a cab driver named Mohammed, who is a local down here, picked me up a couple of weeks before that, and I told him that, you know, I'd like to read your book one day and maybe go to the mosque. And he's like, if you ever want to go, like, this is my number, look me up, you know. And I just said, it's time, I want to go talk to this dude, you know, I want to go. And I rang him, he took me for Isha. I sat down with the Imam, he said a few words that just, I don't know, those exact words were just exactly what I needed to hear, that like, in a spiritual sense, like it was, I knew that I was in the right place. I watched the men pray. There was some like, I don't know if they were on Jamaat, they were from Iraq actually. Some dudes, big white beards, mashallah, some older brothers, and they sat around and they were reading from Hadith, and as soon as they started reading, they're like, come. So I went and sat next to him. He's like, nah, closer, closer. I was nearly sitting on this guy's lap. Come sit, mashallah. And I don't really think he spoke much English, but he's reading the hadith, and then he's looking at me, and I don't know if he's spinning out, and then he just, somehow, I don't know how, he asked me, do you believe in God or something? I said, well, yeah, I do. And whatever he asked me, and he just like, say these words. And I, like, to be fair, at the time, I didn't realize that I was converting. Like, he's just like, say this, so I'm like, well, all right, fair enough. I'll say, and so he's like, say these words. So as I'm saying it in the Arabic, and I only said it in Arabic, it was like, man, that was like thunderbolts, I could feel what these words meant something, and then he's put his hand on my shoulder end of it and goes, you're Muslim, and subhanAllah. And I don't know, I had no idea I was going to be coming home that day any different than I guess I walked in there. I didn't really have hope of finding anything different, but in that moment when he said that to me, it was like, I don't know, it was like the biggest honor for him to say that to me, I just felt like I'd achieved or been like really achieved something. And I was like, wow, thank you, and all the men there cried. Like Imam Imran was there, you ask him, he was there, they all cried, it was crazy. And I went and had a shower at the masjid, at the mosque there, and prayed to the cat, and I don't know, it just happened, like God, like it was just, no one convinced me of anything, it just happened. And subhanAllah, like it was just meant for me, like it's just exactly what I was supposed to be. And ever since then, I haven't hung on to this religion because it was like something that felt good at the time or has helped me through. That's not, like, a lot of stuff that ain't so true can also help you through if you're trying to hang on to something. But I've studied the religion, I've learned at the feet of a lot of good men and a lot of imams and scholars and stuff, and over the years, and I've read a lot, and I know in my bones that this is the absolute truth, not because I'm looking for it or because I want it to be, but it just is, it's like, you can say the ocean's made out of milk, but it's not, it's made out of salt water, and Islam is the truth, and the Quran is from Allah, and Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the messenger of God. And then some people say, oh, believe, they don't believe. Well, it doesn't really matter a stuff if you believe or not, because that's the truth. It is what it is. I read the Quran, I read the miracles, the science of it. The book proves its validity. It proves it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No man in the desert 1400 years ago guessed the way an embryo develops inside the womb of a woman in 3 layers of darkness. I mean, that didn't happen. And that same person didn't guess that the universe is expanding, or it started with an explosion, or that the oceans meet, or that the mountains are placed like pegs. And you know what I mean? Like, this is like a pretty good guesser, right? Like, mashallah. I'm thinking of a number from 1 to 10. What is it? He's going to get every time, right? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Mashallah. So yeah, that's why I'm Muslim. God guided me. That's it. I asked for help and he reached out and gave it to me. I don't know why, because I was no good person, but maybe people who know me from back when I was a Crim too, they say I had a good soft heart back then, and maybe people saw something in me then that I didn't even know I had myself. But I know my mum used to pray for me every night too, and I feel like her prayers have a lot to do with why I was guided. It sort of makes sense because she was always a good person, and it only makes sense. It's only sort of fair that, her suffering would end, and she received guidance too. She took Shahada 3 months after I did. Alhamdulillah. Yeah. Isn't that the best? Like, if that's not the greatest thing you could experience, knowing that your mum's going to be okay, then what else is there? Subhanallah. So yeah, that's how I came to Islam, bro. Anyone else? You got any questions? No? Yes. Go.
Bro, how you see some brothers that we know that are close to us, how can we try to help them, try to get out of this life,
That's $1 million question, eh? How do we help people advise brothers who are in this life move away from it? I think, 5 years ago I would have answered this question differently. I had a much more militant sort of approach to it. I sort of thought that, you could sort of beat the sense into someone. And turns out you can't. Well, I haven't seen it work anyway. I think the first thing I can say definitely will help in that situation is just love your brother unconditionally. Love them, man, and let them know they're loved. And the bottom line is they ain't going to change until they're ready, or God wills, or both of those things need to happen, or whatever, or however that happens to change. But you want to be established in as many people's lives as you can be as the person that they know that they can call when that day comes, when they're ready to make that change. Someone said something once that stuck with me, that advice that isn't asked for is criticism. If someone ain't asking you for your advice and you're just sitting there telling them how they should be doing things, sometimes it's not well received and it pushes people away. And when you are that person that's loved to someone and that they trust, believe me, they'll push you away too. They'll push you away before anyone else, because that's just what you do when you start using in that. You just, and you're in that life, you push away, you just want to surround yourself with people that make you feel normal. Because you're not, and it's not okay what you're doing, but if everyone in your life is doing the same thing as you, you kind of feel all right about it, you feel better about it. But when you see someone that knew you like for the last 10 years, who knew you before you were doing it, and they see you now, you see the truth of yourself in their eyes. You see your own reflection really honestly in their eyes, and you can't turn away from it. And so what do? We just push them away, because it hurts too much to see yourself truly, and to see the hurt in someone's face that comes from them seeing you like that. So one, love them unconditionally and be that person that they can turn to. Two, always give them hope, always talk about the things that they can do and point out, what my mum did with me, looking back, is that she always had me on this pedestal, and it used to make me so angry. I used to scream sometimes, like I'd yell and cry and carry on. I used to say to her, open your eyes, woman, look at me. What? Because she's talking about these good things about me. What's wrong with you? Can't you see I'm no good? Look at these things I've done. Look at me. Look what I've become. I'm not, I'm nothing. You're dreaming, woman. It used to make me angry. But, and I was doing terrible things, but let's say I was doing 25 things that were, if you broke my life up into 25 parts, and I was just failing in all of them and doing real bad stuff, she'd focus on the one thing that was good about me. Son, you've got a kind heart. That's all she'd talk about. So focus on that, and I guess that dragged me, that helped, I see a lot of parents in our community, I'll get a call, I got a call from one mum, and she's like, my son, he's smoking pot. What do I do? I said, well, tell me about him. What else is he doing? Is he, does he do anything? Oh, yeah, he studies. Okay, how's he doing in studies? Yeah, he's in university, he's going well, okay. What else? Oh, he's working part-time, okay. Does he get to the masjid? Yeah, he goes sometimes. He's okay, all right. Well, he's not a total write-off, but but every time he comes into the house, she's screaming at him. You're a junkie, this, that. You're hitting him with the shoe. Everyone focused on. It's like there's an intervention there, and everyone's screaming at this guy because you're just a total scumbag, and a loser and a bum, and how could you this, and you're shame of our family, and 1, 2, 3. And the guy's smoking a joint once a week or something. I'm not saying it's to downplay it. I'm not saying it's good, but what I'm saying is, let's just build on the good. Son, look, you're studying, you're doing well. Look at all these wonderful things. This doesn't really fit in what you're trying to achieve. You can take things on different angles, and just browbeating and smashing people, and with criticizing them. You know what they're going to do? As soon as they get the opportunity, boom, they're gone. They're going to run away from you, and they don't want to listen to your crap, because they already know that they're a loser, or they're not feeling real good about themselves, and that's not, it's not going to help. So love them, focus on the good, give sincere advice, and set a good example. Someone said something the other day, I can't remember who it was, they said, be a lighthouse, shine that light and shine it bright, and the ships that need to come into shore will come and find you. God will send the right people to you at the right time, and you can just be the best example you can be, because you don't know who's paying attention. you might think no one even knows you exist, but there's actually people around you who are looking at you and admiring you and respect you for the way you live your life. You know, I meet young people now who like let's, for an example, like save themselves for marriage. You know, like they haven't slept with a girl yet and they save themselves for marriage, and their friends, even in the community, make fun of them. And man, it's awful. You know, like someone who can withstand all the social pressures of society, especially a young man, with all the insecurities and worries of the world and everyone's opinions, and stay staunch to what they believe is the right thing. Man, I've got so much respect for. Like, I look up to any young man who can stand his ground and do the right thing despite his friends pushing him the other way, eh? Like, so much respect. And that could be, you know, I might be learning life lessons off of some 18-year-old who's like that, because I realize I'm not even being that strong in my own life and my own circumstances now. You know, so never underestimate the value of doing good and being good, and people are watching, you know, and it could be too, you know, and it's a big da'wah. You know, if people know you're religious, know you're Muslim, and you claim to follow the religion as to why you do certain things. Like I said, I met these guys in a gym in Brisbane long before I became Muslim, but the example they set in through their character was the first step in really turning me towards a religion that ultimately led to me accepting it and living it myself. So, you know, just be a good example. Jazakallah khair. Brother, you were going to say something? Was it you going to say something? Nah, cover it. Habibi?
What kind of community work do you do, and would you have any advice or tips for us to like reach out to more youth?
Yeah, so my life now, alhamdulillah. I mentioned I do the prison chaplaincy stuff. Assalamu alaikum. How you doing? So I go to the jails every Friday and I do the khutbah, and I go one other day at least and do sort of one-on-one counselling for the men. I'm a member of Muslim Charitable Fund, MCF. We collect zakat and distribute it locally. So for Brisbane Muslim families who require financial assistance, we'll pay their bills and do all that stuff. We hand out zakat. We do outreach work and stuff and a lot of different things. I'm part of a group called Merciful Servants. We've got homeless runs. We feed. We've got a homeless run. I run a team in Beenleigh. We've got a team in the city. And we've got a team in Woodridge. And all together we do 5 different handouts during the week. And we've been feeding the homeless now for the last 6 years every week. Alhamdulillah. The same organisations, MCF, and in conjunction with Merciful Servants and the people involved in it, also do like free breakfasts at certain schools for kids because a lot of kids go to school, they don't eat because they haven't got enough, their families haven't got enough money to send them off with a good breakfast, believe it or not. So there's things like that. I'm also running a program called Next Step, which we run is a men's support group in Cornubia. And we run that, we're doing it weekly, we're doing it fortnightly now, and that's a program where men can come and talk about what they're going through. A lot of our cultures, you know, because I don't call Islam a culture, the cultures that we come from, you know, where our parents come from and where we've come from, and the culture that we live in now doesn't really encourage men to really talk about their feelings all that much, and so we tend to bottle things up, and we're expected to be the sledgehammer of the house and the rock for everyone else, and it doesn't leave us with someone to talk to sometimes. And you know, deeply religious men, obviously we speak to God, but not everyone's got that down. Is a black belt at that, so to speak, yet. So the men, you'll often find there's a lot of guys dealing with addiction, they're still in the middle of it, or they've got anger issues and all those sorts of things, and it's very therapeutic to open up and talk about what you're going through or what you've survived, because the guy sitting across the room for you might very well just need to hear that for a bit of encouragement for himself, and we all learn from each other. So I love that environment, I love that type of thing. It's really helped me grow as a person and be able to express myself and listen to other people. So we've got the Next Step program. And I think that's about it. And I'm actually a youth worker, like my actual like paid job. I work for Multicultural Australia as a youth worker. So yeah, I've come a long way from robbing drug dealers anyway. Alhamdulillah. And advice, you said, alhamdulillah, you know, thank God for that. And you said advice for sort of how to get involved and do stuff with the youth. You know, just put yourself out there and look, this program here, alhamdulillah, it all starts here. Come, get involved, and every opportunity, every door that opens, take it. You know, this is a path. Like I talked about, I've been talking about this bad path all night and where that leads. This is the opposite. Walk this road and continue walking it, and you'll find that the doors that open are all positive, and the people that you meet will pull you in different directions, but ultimately all headed that way. Volunteer your time, get involved in as much things as you can. Above all else, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to use you for what pleases him most and something significant, you know. It may be that God has a plan for you to be the most amazing youth worker on the planet. It may be that he's got a different plan for you, that there's something else that he'd prefer you to do. But just ask him, ask for contentment, and this is what I ask all the time. Ya Allah, please use me for that which pleases you most, and just place contentment in my heart with whatever it is that you will for me, okay? And if this is something that you're drawn towards with the youth stuff, then you might find that that's Allah's put that beat in your heart for that reason. He wants you to do it. And so just volunteer, do as much as you can. There's 1,000 reasons not to do anything. Like when we started our homeless run, all these people are like, oh bro, you got to get permits from the council, you got to do this, you'll get a fine, you can't give out food that's not cooked in a commercial kitchen, you got to do this and you like, listen bud, I'm going to make sandwiches, I'm going to hand them out, okay? If someone wants to come and find me for it, they can get stuffed. I'll deal with that problem when it comes. Wallah, you know, I'm going to go and apply for a permit to give a hungry bloke a feed. Wallah, it's ridiculous. So, and that's one example. We just started doing it. Look, 5 years later, now I think we may have some permits, we may not. Who cares, right? So don't let the attitude assassins and the naysayers pull you down. Just, if you've got a good idea, take the first step, and then Allah helps those who help themselves. You watch, man. I've seen it so much, you know, 8 years now, this. You take the first step and God just, man, he just runs with you. Allahu Akbar. You know, if it's for good, he just runs with you. Anything else? No? Yes.
How did you fight addiction?
How did
you know first your addicts? How did you know?
How did I know?
Yeah.
Okay,
They never mention how.
there is a specific answer to this, and it's a bit of a strange one, but it's the truth. I mean, I was using all the time, you know. I mean, there was no doubt from anyone's point of view I was a drug addict, but I didn't use those words. And my ex was a big Robbie Williams fan, and she used to watch his DVD over and over again of a concert that he did over in England somewhere. And so I was forced to watch it like 1,000 times as well, you know, whenever she'd watch it. It was always on in the background. And then I watched, part of that was an interview with him where he was talking, and he says, like, he came to some point in time or whatever, and he more or less looked himself in the mirror, or he just said, well, I'm a drug addict, and I accepted that about myself. And I was like, wow. It's like, that dude just come out and said it, you know, and somehow that gave me the courage to look at myself and say the same thing. And I went, wow, yeah, I'm a drug addict. Yeah, and it didn't really mean that much to me at the time, to be honest. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I feel really bad about that, but it was the truth, and I realized it was the truth, and it just took me hearing someone else to say it, to sort of have the courage to say it myself. And, you know, it's accepting those truths. You know, I talked about seeing things as they really are. It was, for me to start, like, in the journey for me changing, the first thing I stopped doing was selling drugs, because, like, I had someone who was coming to me, and he had a family, and he could never see his kids because he was always scattered. He couldn't get his affairs together, you know, and because he was using drugs. And I realized, man, I am directly responsible for your kids being miserable, you know, and when I accepted my role of the truth of the fact that I was accountable for that, was when I really realized that I had to change, because that wasn't a reality that I was comfortable with. So in the same way that accepting that I was a drug addict didn't change me, it was a start to at least, knowing that it is what it is. Yeah, it is what it is. And so that's why, like, even people who are doing like bizarre big stuff these days, boys I know, and then I'm like, I'm not asking, like, change, please, but if you don't, please just be honest with yourself, because at least, at least ask God to forgive you and guide you. Just please don't tell yourself that what you're doing is right when it's not, Yeah, Jazakallah khair. All right, Tom Sully, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it, the opportunity to talk with you. And Allah barik feek. Salam alaikum wa rahmatullah. How long was that? Was that more?